I will hand it over to Carrie.
Thank you, Aisha. So HSH is a transportation-focused planning and engineering firm. You can see our services there on the screen, which include, complete streets planning and design. We have a public outreach group. We do traffic engineering, civil engineering. We've recently added bridge engineering. And then we have a construction services group. So we like to say we take projects from planning, which is what we're doing now, all the way through construction. And we always are very proud to see our projects get finished and to see the difference that they make for communities such as yours. Next slide. So just a few projects that we're working on to give you a bit of the flavor of what we're about. So one of the things we're working on right now is MassDOT's Shared Use Path Planning and Design Guide. So this is an image from one piece of that guide that we're working on in coordination with MassDOT and also with Mass Trails. We've been doing a number of these complete streets plans, prioritization plans throughout the state. This is a picture actually, I think, of Lancaster. We did their plan and then they were successful in getting their tier 3 money to redo some of their sidewalks and ADA ramps and crosswalks that you can see here in the photo. Another project that we're working on is the Legacy Trail in Weston, and this one is in construction. Again, we started out with it in planning and design and took it all the way through construction. We've recently helped the town of Northbridge look at some circulation issues around their school. They have a number of schools relatively close together that you can see here in the photo. And we had put together a plan for them to help deal with some of those circulation and pedestrian safety issues. And we helped them apply for a shared streets grant. And so you can see in the photo here, they've actually put some of those temporary measures down to help protect pedestrians near their schools. And they hope to then make those permanent down the road. Next slide. Route 28 in Barnstable. This was a project that was a safety project. Route 28 is Falmouth Road, and that's a pretty busy road on the Cape. There were significant safety issues for all users, and as part of that project, you can see here we were able to put a shared use path in along with a number of other transportation improvements. Turn off the noise. Route 30 in Weston was an intersection project. This is an intersection adjacent to Weston High School, and we did some improvements to the traffic signal. Again, this was a safety improvement, and you can see there were not crosswalks here before. There are new crosswalks and ADA ramps so that kids walking to the high school would be able to cross safely. In Quincy Center, we're getting into some projects that are a little more urban. In Quincy Center, we worked with the city, starting all the way from looking at a feasibility study. This area here that is now a park, Aisha, can you point to that across the middle of that used to be Hancock Street. And it used to be a street that went through, and there are a number of historic properties around here. 2 of our US presidents are buried in Quincy Center. City Hall is here. There's a Red Line T station, all very close together. And so we did a feasibility study first to close this street, and then the subsequent improvements around it. And then the final phase was them building this park adjacent to, this is the Church of the Presidents there that you kind of see. That's the historic looking building. As well as new City Hall, and as I mentioned, other buildings. So starting from feasibility and all the way through construction, including the park construction. Next. This is Central Square in East Boston. Again, so some more kind of urban feeling projects. This was another project that started out as a safety project because there was a lot less. This is a park in the middle, and it's kind of a square about. It's not really a roundabout. You go around it, it's kind of a rectangle. This circular area in the center was the historic park, and we actually expanded the park all the way around, including planning for things like the farmers market that happens here in the summertime. And a lot of other ability to have some of those kinds of activities, as well as narrowing all of the streets to make the crossings shorter Some of the streets have bike lanes. We made signal improvements in some locations. Next slide, please. And then this is Connect Historic Boston, which is right in downtown Boston, adjacent to the TD Garden. And you can see on the left side of the road there, that's all the new development that's going up around the garden. But we, again, started this project with planning and took it all the way through construction to build this two-way separated bike lanes in the center of Causeway Street, and they connect over to the waterfront in the north end. There's another piece on Commercial Street that wraps around, and this also connects up on Staniford Street into Beacon Hill. Next, I think that, and then last, I think this might be the last one. Another sort of urban project. Some of you may be familiar with this area. This is the deck in Milton that is on top of 93, and so there were some traffic issues, some parking concerns. There's an open space there that isn't very well used now. So we were trying to come up with a redesign of it that would make it more attractive while, again, trying to shorten the crosswalks. You can see the bike lanes on the plan. That paved area that goes kind of diagonally from Adams Street, across Adams Street, was a street that, again, we proposed to close. The town tested that first and now this design is in construction. So you can kind of see the range of everything from urban to suburban and rural projects types that we do. But we really, like I said, pride ourselves on coming up with transportation solutions that fit the context of where we're working.
Okay, so now we're going to just jump into Complete Streets, give you a little background on the program, talk about what we're doing now at Duxbury, and then we can jump into the tutorial and then some feedback. So what is a complete street? It's one that provides safe and accessible options for all travel modes. So that includes walking, biking, transit, vehicles, and basically making every street as comfortable and as accessible as possible for everybody, all ages and abilities. Improvements can range from larger projects like shared use paths through towns, or smaller projects like improving ADA curb ramps or installing segments of sidewalk. The benefits of complete streets are those that are safety, accessibility, equity, health, economic, and for users of all ages and abilities. This includes children, seniors, those with disabilities, those without access to a car, but in short, basically making a street as comfortable as possible for everyone. The Complete Streets funding program history. The program was released in February of 2016. The MassDOT Capital Investment Plan started providing funding for the program in fiscal year 2017, and there has been nearly $46 million awarded for project construction to date across the state. So far, 226 municipalities have passed Complete Streets policies, and those are viewed here. 198 of those have been approved for prioritization plans. And then of that group, 148 projects have been funded as far as the last round that has been announced. So this is the group of prioritization plans, and then these are the locations of the projects that were funded. So planning assistance to support the Complete Streets Prioritization Plan is up to $38,000 that is available to any community. The Complete Streets construction, so this is after you have your prioritization plan and want to apply for the next round of funding, you can apply for up to $400,000 annually. And the town's projects must be fully designed or require little or no design to be funded. Funds cannot be used for design. They have to be used for everything after that construction. The tier 3 or the construction cannot be used for projects on state-owned roads. So that includes Route 3 and Route 3A in Duxbury. So this is the stage we're at now. We're at the Complete Streets Prioritization Plan development, and that's the focus of this meeting. The prioritization plan process starts with compiling existing studies, plans, projects, past work that is relevant to Complete Streets, and then mapping areas of concern and areas with potential demand for projects. These are some of the documents that we have reviewed. This is not the comprehensive list, just more of the recent documents that we have reviewed already. We're using these plans and projects to inform what goes onto the prioritization plan, in addition to feedback from Val and other stakeholders, committees, and from the community. So this is a map. I'm going to jump into a couple slides of existing conditions. This is the analysis we've done thus far. In Duxbury from 2015 to 2019, there's been 17 bike and pedestrian crashes. As you can see, a lot of them have happened along Washington Street. This can be an indicator that there are opportunities for safety improvements, especially along this road, but in all areas where crashes have occurred. The latent demand is focused on points of interest, and these are places where people would typically travel throughout the town of Duxbury, and the analysis captures the potential demand of places people would go. Latent demand analysis shows where people would most likely walk or bike if the facilities were available. So for walking, that would be about a half mile out from the points of interest, and for bicycle, that would be 1 mile out from the points of interest. For sidewalk conditions, we put our sidewalk condition analysis into 4 categories. So an excellent sidewalk would be pretty much new or nearly new sidewalk. A good sidewalk would have smooth pavement, few bumps and depressions, and there's very little or no obstructions along the road. So that's what most sidewalks fall under. Fair would be with intermittent bumps and depressions, some more obstructions, and then poor pavement would be really uncomfortable to ride on, places where it's difficult to push a wheelchair or a stroller or things like that. The bicycle level of comfort is focused on how comfortable people would be to bike on particular roads throughout Duxbury. Roads that have a high level of comfort tend to be those like local roads and trails, and ones that have a low level of comfort are those that tend to be narrower, have high traffic speeds, have high volume roads in relation to traffic. So the criteria we used is the roadway width, and compared that with the traffic volumes and the presence of the center line to determine which streets would be the most comfortable to bike on. And finally, we have a map of persons with disabilities. This analysis is based on the census data. So it shows the percentage of people with disabilities throughout towns based on their census group. So some of the trends that we saw thus far are most roads are not comfortable for cycling, missing connections between current pedestrian network and trails and points of interest, and then minimal sidewalk infrastructure throughout town. The next step that we're moving towards is gathering input from the community and from town officials. One of the ways we do that is through the Wiki Map. As you can see, a lot of people have already participated, which is great. We want as much feedback as possible so that we can come out with the best product possible. If you haven't been to the website, it's here below, and it's also on the Complete Streets website, on the town's website. I will be giving a short tutorial of this at the end if you have had difficulty using it or you've never used something like this before. So this part of the public meeting, this is what our typical public meetings look like pre-COVID, but what we'll do tonight is kind of get your feedback. We have people taking notes for us on anything that you guys might have to say, and then we'll be incorporating that and the information from the Wiki Map into feedback for the prioritization plan. I'm here to answer any questions about the program, and so the next steps will be the tutorial of the Wiki Map. And then after we get your public input, we get all of our analysis in there, all of that, we work with the town to identify a list of projects. So we'll develop a list of projects and review that. And then after we have a solid list, we'll take that list and prioritize it, which on the list, it shows rankings 1 through however many projects you have. And we rank those based on the need for the project, input from you guys, input from town officials, crash data, and other existing conditions data. And we move on from there. So the next steps are to continue the stakeholder and community input. We will have the map open for a few more weeks after this meeting, just in case you haven't had time to add your input already. And then we will move into identifying projects and prioritizing them for the plan. And then after that, we will submit it on April 1st of 2020. So for MassDOT approval. After it's approved, the town can go for tier 3 funding, which the first deadline for that, the next deadline for that would be May of 2020. And that's when you would apply for that $400,000 for a particular project. If you have any additional questions after this meeting, here's my information below, complete streets at Howard Stein Hudson ASOC.com. My information is also on the town's website, I believe, and also on the Wiki Map. So if you have something you forgot about, having trouble with the Wiki Map, that kind of stuff, then you can email me here. I'm going to close this out for a second.
Aisha, this is Valerie. I was wondering if I could jump in for just a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
And just share with the community that our goal is to have a draft plan available for public comment. I think we're thinking before the end of the year, around that time, and we know everyone's going to be busy with holidays and getting ready for town meetings. So we want to give everybody plenty of time to look at it. So there'll be several weeks before we're pulling it together. And that's where you see that where Aisha was talking about submitting it later in the spring.
All right, so I will jump into a very quick tutorial of the Wiki Map, and then after that, we'll open it up for questions, comments.
You have a question here. How many people have used the Wiki Map so far?
That's a good question. I can show you. I haven't gone on the back end yet to see exactly how many people, but when I share the screen, you can see as of today how many dots and lines we have.
Okay.
Are you guys able to see this screen? The
Yes.
Wiki Map screen? Okay, so when you go to the website, this is the first thing that pops up is this welcome window that gives you directions. And then here's the email address that I mentioned in the PowerPoint. If you don't want to enter your email address, that's completely fine. You just click here on continue as guest. None of your personal information will be shared, and it'll be completely anonymous. So after you click here, it'll jump to this other welcome screen. And you don't have to, you also don't have to fill this out if you don't want to. You can, that's great. You click on one of these and submit. If you don't want to fill it out, you just X that out as well. If you want to add a point to the Wiki Map, you click add points. You pick what type of feedback you want to get, whether that's on ADA accessibility, on bicycle, pedestrian, or transit. So I'm just going to choose ADA accessibility for the purpose of this. Then you click anywhere on the map within the town boundary, and that will pop, this will pop up. You can check any of these that apply to your concern or your comment. You don't have to pick any of these, but we put some of these to help people along. If you have a different comment that is not addressed here, you can put that in the comment box, press submit, and it's sent to us. If you want to draw a line, this is for people who want to discuss routes that they wish they could bike on or uncomfortable segments. You click on one of these, then you click here, you point to as far as you want to go, you double click, and then you type in your information and press submit. And that is super easy to use the Wiki Map. I suggest that. It'll give the most concise feedback, and also it'll just be able, you can add as many comments as you want, and it's kind of fun to use. Yeah, so I will stop sharing my screen now and open it up for questions.
you want people to type in their questions in the chat? Do you want people to raise their hands so we can allow them to speak? How would you like to handle that?
Let's address the ones that are in the chat first, and then after that we can do raising hands to speak.
Okay.
So go ahead, Val.
One is, how many people have used the Wiki Map? I'm not sure if we got to that.
We didn't, but you can see on this, if I share my screen again, this is how many comments that have been used thus far. I haven't gone into the back end because I want to make sure I have everybody's as much feedback as possible before I do that. But you can see here how much people have been using the map, this is a lot for this project. So it's really exciting.
Yeah. And so another question was, why does it have a 2020 April and May date? And I think what we're talking about is 2021.
Oh, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
that's my fault.
Yeah, I think you mistakenly said 2020, Aisha, but yes.
Oh, my fault. Sorry.
2021.
Yes,
It's hard to
2020.
keep track in COVID.
Apologies. Yes.
Yeah, we do not want to go back.
So another question that came up is, what's the maximum number of grants one town can receive?
You can apply annually, so once a year for the 400,000, and then one time for the prioritization plan funding.
And if we were lickety split fast, it's possible that we might be able to do more than one, or is that, I know Ray's about to say something.
No,
Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
I'll let Aisha is doing a great job. So
Okay.
So it's just once a year. So if you apply in this May round, you have to wait until the next May round to apply again. But you can apply again.
And
And
I will also say that they typically want to see that you've finished the construction from the prior round before they would consider you. So if you still have like lingering little bits of construction going on from what you applied for the first time, it's not likely that you're going to get selected until you're finished with spending their money the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that you pointed out earlier is that we're not probably going to be in a position to apply in the very first round that we'd be eligible for, because we also need to do the engineering and design work for any of these projects that we identify. And we, at this time, don't have any funding set aside for specific projects. So we have to go through that prioritization process. So I just want everyone to understand that this is one step, and then we'll continue as a community to take additional steps. I see a question here. What can be done about Route 3A? We work with our Old Colony Planning Council on that. We've done corridor studies. We've done a road safety audit just in the last few years. We went to town meeting to work on trying to get signalization at exit 3. I mean, I don't know what the new number is, but it used to be exit 10 off of Route 3. And that's a big deal for us. We were recently told that we were expiring in the TIP because it's been in the TIP for 10 years, which is the Transportation Improvement Plan, without any progress being made on the engineering and design work by the local communities, Kingston and Duxbury, who need to pay for that engineering work. So it was on the town meeting warrant, and then COVID came and made that difficult for us. So we got an extension for, we hope to come back with our funding request to town meeting in the coming 2022. So not this coming year, but the following year. And we've gotten support from the state to get that extension. We think it's really important. We need to continue working with other ways to try to find funding and coordinating with the state, and this prioritization process will identify those places where we need to do work, but we may not be able to get the funding from Complete Streets to do what we need to do. It might have to come from other sources. So I hope that answers that question. There's a question here. Has the state funded rural surface sidewalk materials such as powdered stone or cinders? I just want to make it clear that Howard Stein Hudson is our consultant. They're not the state, and they're not the funders.
Yeah, and to answer that, Val, I have not heard of, and none of the projects that we've worked on with towns have included those surface materials. So I can't say whether they would discount them or whether they would they would consider them in the funding applications. I don't think we've had any of our towns ask for those materials in any of their projects.
That has to do sometimes with safety and maintenance and things like that, correct?
Accessibility sometimes as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. Okay, I think those are all the questions in the chat box right now. There's some in the Q&A. I see that we have a question about whether we have looked at safety issues specifically yet surrounding Powder Point Avenue. And I think that I can say that we continue to get comments. We're not focusing on any particular area. We're looking town-wide. And once we start to narrow down what specific recommendations and projects we have after we get public input, we'll start working on those issues. If you have questions specific to speeding and questions about that, the Highway Safety Committee is the focal point for those discussions. But we will certainly list all of the areas, including Powder Point Avenue, as places that we're looking at. We know that that's an issue that we need to address. Another question here is a question about, does town involvement and how many people go on the Wiki Map and market affect the money that's awarded? No. The town is just collecting your input, and then it doesn't matter how many people say one thing or another. This is just one of many, many ways that we're collecting all the information from everyone about what we need to do here in the town. And this will all be summarized in a nice draft with, and then in a series of recommendations from our consultant we'll be following for all of us to talk about before we finalize the plan. And we'll be coming around to everyone asking for your input. Do you guys have more you want to add to that? No? Okay. Another question. We had two questions about the ADA. And one was that you were commenting in the Wiki Map, Aisha, about how there are markers that we can put up to comment about accessibility throughout the street network in the Wiki Map process. And here there's another one. Can we be more clear about what we mean by ADA and what kinds of examples it might look like? Because a lot of people don't really understand what that means. And there are so many different issues. When I myself, being someone who has a service dog, I understand that ADA is very broad. And so I have a lot of empathy there myself. So they're hoping that perhaps we could provide some examples on maybe a link through My Complete Streets landing page that people could use to learn more about what that means and how they could then react to the Wiki Map.
So some examples of that would be upgrading a curb ramp to add tactile warning strips or things that the yellow pads that people see with the dots, that kind of thing, that would be ADA, or widening a sidewalk to avoid obstruction. Say, for instance, the sidewalk is only 3 feet wide and there's a utility pole. So somebody in a wheelchair would have difficulty getting through that. Those are some examples, but we actually have a handout for that, Val. If you wanted, I could give that to you to put on the website, on the Complete Streets website, if people wanted to look through that as well.
I'd appreciate that. That would be great. So we have a question, the speed limit on Powder Point. Again, this is a broad community-wide plan. And if people want to get really specific about Powder Point Avenue, this is not the forum for that. That would be going to the Highway Safety Committee and asking them to, set up a public meeting so that you can all have a discussion with them. They are the ones who are making the comments right now and advising the Board of Selectmen on decisions that they're making. I only provide administrative assistance to them as they request it. And they are an independent advisory group that we hope will participate in this process actively. And they're certainly being asked to comment on the plan as we move forward. So we're looking at the broad issue of sharing those streets. And speed limits is not really, it's part of that dialogue, but this very specific question about speed limits should be directed to the Selectmen and the Highway Safety Committee. The next question is, are Route 53 and 14 also out of scope? Again, anything that's in the town related to the transportation network at all should be commented on. Whether or not the Complete Streets program can address it is different. But we'll certainly look at the design issues around all of them. It just relates to whether or not we can fund it through Complete Streets. So when Howard Stein Hudson is presenting to you that we can't fund it through the Complete Streets program, that doesn't mean that we're excluding that from our planning process. We're not excluding any aspect of transportation in this planning process. The next question, is it only possible to select a category or can a comment apply to multiple categories? Aisha, I think you'd be the best person to respond to that.
Yeah, a comment can apply to multiple categories. And like I said, I personally will be going through the comments. So if you're not really sure which dot to use, just pick one and you can put whatever comment that you want. And that's free for however, for whatever you need it to be. We are under the constraints of the program and those are just how many dots we can put there. So anything you want to add, feel free to add that in the open space comment.
Okay, now someone asked why exit 10 would be a priority over sidewalks. It's not a priority over sidewalks. It's a priority because it's the most dangerous intersection in our community and we're responding regularly to accidents there. And it's the only unsignalized intersection or interchange on Route 3 south of Boston. We have limited funding, so we have to make choices. And the town is also interested in sidewalks, which is why we're doing this planning process. It's not that one is more important than the other. We're worried about everyone's safety. The question here was whether or not we are going to address, I'm going to the chat because I've ignored that for a few minutes. So nighttime street lighting. I think that is definitely part of the discussion. And we should add that, especially where we have issues where people are using mixed uses or even limited lighting. Safety is a concern. So anything that you want to put into that wiki comment or email me, and I'll certainly be saving this chat so that we have all of these comments as part of our community input. And so they're saying they have a few ideas there. So we'll save this chat and share it with Howard Stein Hudson. Another concern was having a wide sidewalk on Washington Street to Powder Point Avenue. Yes, so we've had a really good dialogue, and I want to thank the Sidewalk Council, the Walking Council. I've got your name wrong. I know I got it right in the intro. Town Council Inc. They're doing a great job of fundraising, and the town has engaged in a process where we're trying to support those efforts in terms of what we need to do. It's complicated, but we are trying to actively support and look into what can we do to create a sidewalk along Washington Street where everyone's comfortable with it and that we have everybody participating in that discussion as we move forward. And that will be something that we follow up on actively while this planning process is going on.
And that's something you can also add on the plan. We've done several projects where it was an entire length of a street and we've broken it up to 3 or 4 phases so that you can definitely put that on the plan as well.
Yep. So another question here was, will the final plan include estimates for engineering design? And I think you guys can respond to that.
It will for the top projects. So when I talk with Val and after we get feedback, we'll decide which projects that you guys want cost estimates for, and then we will provide those along with the plan.
Okay. Another question is whether bike paths can be added. I think it says many streets are too narrow, can bike paths be added? So so in conservation areas, we've been advised that that's not going to be part of our trail network. That's how the Conservation Commission wants their lands to be treated. So we are looking at where we have a street layout And in some cases where we really want to put a bike path, we might in the long run be talking about easements or, you know, trying to widen the layout, meaning the part that the public controls in order to put in bike paths. That doesn't mean we shouldn't daydream. I'll give you an example. When I lived in Michigan or worked there, a planner just drew all by himself a nice vision of a walkway around the community with a bridge, a pedestrian bridge. And then it was built. And not only that, but it became a walking loop all the way around the city. And it was a fantastic thing. So once you think of it and put it down, give us your thoughts. We can try to work towards that. Is once the community has a vision, that's when things start to happen. How can we have one priority for a project on 3A that is expensive, dependent on corresponding with Kingston, which has gone on for 10 years without moving on to the many other 3A issues we have? So Carl, that's a tough question. I think mainly it's because we don't have funding. We only have Chapter 90 monies here in Duxbury that we can use to deal with transportation planning and transportation improvements. And right now, that money is only enough to maintain the pavement on the existing traveled roads. We don't have money for exit 10 either. Exit 10 was identified and is because it's a state road, we're able to use the help that we can get from our regional planning agency and Mass Highway to do a lot of the identification of issues on those roads with their help. But we don't have that kind of help on our private roads and other public roads, which is why we've gone into this planning process now. We're trying to work on all of these issues and identify funding, which we just don't have at the moment. This will make us eligible for funding where we have a layout and where we have an eligible project that we've been able to engineer and design. And again, we'd have to find the funding for that aspect as well. Are we going to look at how close trees are to roadways, especially the narrow ones? Yes, that won't initially be what we do here, but it will be part of any project process that we do as we focus in on it. So if the other issue we have is all of the roads that are public in the town of Duxbury are considered scenic roads. So any tree removals are subject to public hearings and discussion with the broader community. So that's a kind of a more project specific question. And we've asked the Open Space Committee, and this might be another good time to try to do that, to identify meaningful ways that have beautiful trees where we maybe don't want to try to widen or improve versus roads that are less important and maybe more important for safety. And that's something that we need the community to help us with, because the community has told us, the town people that work for you, that all of the roads are scenic. So it makes it hard for us to know what the community really wants to remain as scenic and where they feel more comfortable with us looking at widening. Will there be social and environmental impact assessments conducted? Again, that would be on a project by project basis, but you are looking at social impacts in terms of access, proximity to trails, proximity to getting to sidewalks. And what we're going to do is as we've done the comprehensive plan, we've brought a lot of those issues to the table there. And there's a whole chapter, a detailed chapter on all the issues related to transportation planning here in Duxbury that I would ask that you go and take a look at that. And feel free to follow up with me with questions related to that here in the planning office. I think I've caught up. Will there be condo developments before the ZBA that would include comment from the Highway Safety Committee? That is something in our zoning bylaw that right now doesn't call for that. But really the condo developments, anyone that wants to comment, that's publicly available. It's not actually sent to the Highway Safety Committee because the ZBA has, when there are traffic concerns, they're using traffic engineers, both from the consultant side and their peer review consultants who have expertise in safety related to traffic and sidewalk control for design. I think we've caught up so far. So these are really good questions, and I hope this is a helpful process for people to understand that. So I'll just talk a little bit more about the planning process that happens around transportation in Duxbury for everyone's, while we're looking for more comment here. The selectmen are the road commissioners, and they make a lot of the decisions related to public roads that are not state roads. The DPW director is the one who handles and manages the Chapter 90 money. The Chapter 90 money comes from the state, and it's formulaic. It's based on how many people live here and how many miles of roads we have. And it varies from year to year. And as I said earlier, we don't have any funding outside of that to do any transportation work here in Duxbury. Any other work that we do is coming from either a special town meeting action or somehow being funded by grants or through a developer doing some activity. We don't have much development right now in our community, so it's heavily dependent on us finding outside sources for funds. We also spend almost all of that money on an annual basis managing the pavement on the roads and maintaining the sidewalks that we have. We do the plowing, we do the sanding, we do the salting, we do the paving, we do the culverts, we do the damage that happens every year with that Chapter 90 money. And for example, we have to repair bridges with that money, culverts, drainage, hatch areas. So it's not a lot of money. And over time, the cost to do that work goes up and the allocations have remained pretty much level. So it's expensive, and it's a statewide and even a nationwide issue that local communities do not have enough money to maintain what they have, and they also don't have enough money to do more. So that's a struggle that we all face. Here's a question. Can we get a copy of the slide presentation? Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Can we add the shared use path planning and design guide to the planning website? Sure. There's a link to the Complete Streets program, and I think it has links to all of those different planning guides there.
So the shared use path planning and design guide is not complete yet. We are still working on it. I believe there's a primer that's available through Mass Trails. That's kind of one piece of it, but we're still working on it. So it has not been released yet. MassDOT does have the separated bike lane planning and design guide, which I believe is on their website as well.
We have a question here. Can we fund an education program to help all the residents know how to use the roads, which side to walk on, which side to bike on? Because we have such narrow roads and safety is a big concern here.
Not through this program. This program is specifically for constructing transportation projects. So education programs wouldn't fall under funding for this program.
Yeah, I know that I'll just share that I think the Open Space Committee and other groups have worked together to have like ride your bike to school days where they go through and teach the kids, the school children, how to safely use the schools, the access to the schools. And that's one way that we've been able to do that. But we have limited availability to do things like that. It's possible maybe that the police department is somebody that we could team up with on things like that. Maybe the Highway Safety Committee would have some ideas there. There's so many things we would like to do as a community, and
Oh, I think she,
I have to say we're very, that's why we're here tonight. We're doing what we can. And interestingly enough, the town at town meeting not too long ago asked the selectmen to stop building sidewalks. So this is kind of a renewed interest in walkability here in Duxbury that had faded not that long ago, and it's actually in a town meeting record where they actually the selectmen reacted in their annual report saying that they were quite surprised. But that's part of the reason that we don't have set-asides for transportation here in Duxbury is because town meeting asked us to stop building sidewalks. So it's kind of like we're coming back to something we used to do in the past. And we haven't had active funding for that in a long time because town meeting asked us not to. So we're coming back around.
I just a fast comment about the Wiki Maps, especially, congratulations Duxbury for utilizing it so much. But you guys are the community. You guys are on the roads. So the more you use it, the more data we're going to be able to analyze and use it for the making up the prioritization plan. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. I see we have another question. We have several streets, Mayflower Street, East Street, and Lincoln Street do have the statement is being overwhelmed by 5 or 6 condo developments in a little over a mile. How can we keep the roads safe if the Highway Safety Committee has no input before the ZBA? So that's not accurate. It's just anybody, any committee can make comment on these to the ZBA. What I was saying is that it's not automatically requested whenever there's a development. But the Highway Safety Committee could, if it wanted to, ask to be added to the list that the ZBA actively seeks comment from. There's no reason that couldn't happen. It's just not something that's written into the bylaw, which is where their distribution list is generated. So the Highway Safety Committee would just need to reach out to the ZBA and ask to be added to the list for distribution. And then also, if they want to comment on the condominium developments that are before the town, they should just go right ahead and do that. There's no reason why they couldn't do that. Let's see.
Well, one more thing, just another point to add about the education piece. There are, and I can't think of any off the top of my head, but something that maybe you or some of the members of the committees could check out. There are not-for-profits who do some of that education kind of stuff around biking and walking. So that might be an avenue for getting that education and kind of training piece going.
That's good to know. Yep. Oh, we actually, our planning board vice chairman, Mr. Glennon, is saying that some folks are not understanding how to ask questions in this format. So what we want you to do is either in the chat or the Q&A, which I have both windows open, just type in your question. So if you go down to the bottom of your viewing screen with your mouse, you'll see a chat box and a Q&A box with little comment logos above them. And anybody can just type right in there, and we're reading and responding to those live. So if folks are looking for that, we'll keep this open for a little bit so that people have a chance to type in their questions. So I'll go back to exit 10 a little bit briefly. Back when there was a comprehensive development, it's called Island Creek Village. Back when they came to the town and said that they were planning on looking at developing there, they filed a special permit with the town ZBA, and they did traffic studies there. And the traffic studies went through engineering and math and review, and they met what's called a warrant, which is just a fancy way of saying that they needed a signal. And that was 10 years ago. And we also knew that once this was built out, we would still need that signal, and we would need it to help enable gaps so people could turn in and out of that development once it was built. that's why we're seeing more accidents there, because it's been built. But in the meantime, we have not had a chance to install those signals. So there's a long process that goes into that. And the way it got into the Transportation Improvement Program was that the ZBA asked them to do that as part of their work in order to get their permit. And in fact, the ZBA actually asked them to build the signals while they were at it. But that's more than was reasonable in the eyes of the court, the Housing Appeals Committee. When that decision was appealed to the state said that you already need a signal. Your developer here is going to need to create gaps so that they can turn safely in and out, but it's something that's more of an obligation of the community to work on the issue of that signal. And so they were only asked to put it into the Transportation Improvement Plan, which they did. And so we've been working on that. The next question, when did the town decide they wanted to stop building sidewalks? I will look that up. It's in a town meeting report, and I can't remember the exact date, but I can put that up on my page, my Complete Streets page, probably tomorrow. I'll have to look that up, but it is something that the town meeting actually told the selectmen they wanted them to stop doing it. And that doesn't mean we're going to stop now. We're up and at it. We've gotten your feedback in several different surveys that have been done in the community in the last couple of years, starting with the Conservation Commission folks and the Open Space Committee. They did a survey and everybody said they wanted to be able to bike and walk safely in the community. Then we did our comprehensive plan survey, and that was the #1 response in the town, was that we need more walkability. And sidewalks was the word that was being used, but I think walkability is a better terminology. We built the walking loop at the senior center as a way to provide an example to the community of what that could look like. And that was done through a grant from AARP, where Joanne raised a lot of funds through just really active and engaged citizens. And then we worked with each other to write that grant application to AARP. Let's see. What, if anything, can be done if a street is selected for a sidewalk, but the residents on the street are opposed? That's a good question. That has come up. And I know that there's some dialogue. I'll just say broadly that around the schools, when they reversed where the buildings are from the fields several years ago, the sidewalk network for the kids to get back and forth to the schools was not addressed as part of that. And so some of the residents that live near the schools aren't thrilled at the idea of putting in sidewalks that would change the look and feel of their road frontage. So if the town owns the road layout and there is enough room to place a sidewalk, then of course it wouldn't happen on anyone's private property without their permission. Or if we all got down to it and we really, really wanted to put that sidewalk in and we couldn't work out an easement, there are other things called takings that can happen, but that's not something that Duxbury has ever looked at for putting in a sidewalk. It's always been a cooperative approach where someone has said, yes, I'm happy to have you put a sidewalk there. And that's how we hope to continue. We certainly don't have the funds to try to acquire additional land. It's a cooperative give and take, and we're going to have to work through issues like that as they come up. And so an important part of the process is public input, which is why we're here tonight. And any projects that we take on are always going to involve the public and outreach. So there's no surprises coming, and we're all going to be talking through these. And because the funding comes from special sources, it would even be at this point a town meeting vote. So it's really something that's not going to be sneaking up on anyone. And we want to hear from you if you don't want to have that sidewalk. I know people have come in to my office one-on-one and individually told me that. I have not shared their identities with anyone, but I am open to hearing that and sharing that there are people that live on that particular street that are not interested in having the sidewalk, to the people who are doing the planning, so that there is an understanding that there might be a difference of wills and that needs to be addressed and thought about in the planning process. There's another comment here. There are lots of places to walk, not so many that you can bike safely, at least on crosstown roads. Agreed. So sometimes biking is a big deal. The other thing I'm hearing from folks is that even though you can walk, especially the fantastic work that the Conservation Commission has done to put walking trails where they belong in terms of protecting the environment. And they do a fantastic job of managing that. They've been super active during COVID as more and more people have gotten outdoors. And we're thrilled to have that as one of the assets that we have in our community. It's so pristine and beautiful. One of the things that's really challenging, though, is for some folks, they can't get out there. They're not able to take that kind of a walk. They need more of a flat surface. And we also have some people here who are wheelchair bound and they don't have places to get out and roam like the rest of us might if we're bipeds that don't need that kind of help. So the ADA accessible trail that we built at the senior center is one place that we've been able to construct that is ADA compliant. And we've done that, and we know that there are people using it because they're able to do that. And we'd love to provide more of that here in our community in the right place. That place is next to the fire station at the senior center, has food, bathrooms, and goodies right there. And friends can gather, and there's plenty of places to watch the birds. And I understand a bocce court's been going in, and it's going to be, when COVID is over, we're going to be able to do more workshops outdoors there. So we're just so excited that everyone's participating there. And the support of Joanne at the senior center has been tremendous. And we would like to do more of that. In where I lived and worked in Michigan, we built ADA accessible bird watching platforms. So you could actually wheelchair up high enough to see out over wetlands areas. And Joe Grady and I have one place where we'd like to do that here in Duxbury. We hope to get funding while we're working together to make that happen so that we have an ADA accessible nature trail. And that's a goal that we have here. And we plan on doing that. Maybe not this year because it's a little bit crazy, but we do hope to get going on that soon. So we do need to work on our accessibility, and we couldn't agree more with everybody's comments about safety and the need to provide more walkability. And that's what we're here to explore. So again, if people are struggling with the Wiki Map format itself, please feel free to just send me an email, give me a call, let me know that you want me to come back to your committee and answer more questions, to talk dialogue about Washington Street pretty soon. I don't want to dive into that tonight because I'm still wrapping my head around that. But I think it seems like the questions are slowing down. So I'm going to turn it back to the panelists, see if there's any more comments you might want to add, or if there's more that I might need to touch on.
I think we're set on our end. If you do have any additional questions, again, the email address to reach me is on the Complete Streets website for Town of Duxbury. It's also on the Wiki Map. Again, if you have questions about how to use the Wiki Map, I'm also available for that as well.
Great, and I'll just direct everybody, if you go to the town website and go to the planning department, there's a link on the left-hand side called Complete Streets. And click on that, and all of the information is there for what we're doing. And we should have this up on PAC TV within a day or two, and they'll let us know when that will be running for people to watch. And then you can always download it once it's not live streaming anymore and watch it on their archive site. So we'll have this running. We have our draft policy up through the end of this month, and then we'll be coming back around to the selectmen for their comments. We did only get one comment so far. So I think people were pretty happy with the draft. And then we'll have the draft Complete Streets plan available soon. I don't know exactly when, because we need to go through this at the staff level, working with Peter Butkus and our other folks that are working with us. And then we'll get that draft out to all of our advisory committees and to the, put it up on our webpage for people to look at. And we'll do a tweet and a news feed to let people know it's there. And then we hope to come back, after town meeting to try to wrap that up. And that will give everybody plenty of time to give us their comments and thoughts, and for me to work my way around to coming to different committee meetings and answering questions. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and we're really pleased to get all these great questions. And thank you everyone for your participation, and we look forward to hearing more from you. And thank you, Howard, Stein, Hudson. You've done a tremendous job pulling so much information together. And I want to thank Brian, Glennon, and Rennie Reed for attending tonight as well, that our leadership is here, and all of the advisory committees that are here tonight, and our Sidewalk Council, and Richard Prone. I think it's great that all of you are here tonight, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Duxbury.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Okay, take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.